Hello, amazing parents and caretakers, and welcome to the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. I'm your family empowerment coach, Celia Kibler. I'm a mom of a blended family of 5 kids. I'm a grandma of 9 kids, an author, a teacher, a speaker, and a consultant with over 40 years of training and real-life parenting experience. I'm here to offer you practical, doable tips, strategies, and techniques that will pump up your parenting skills and create peace, love, and laughter throughout your family. In addition, I'll be interviewing some great humans that are on a mission to make your life a better, happier, and healthier life. So let's not waste any time and get started with the next episode of the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. Thanks for listening. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast, which is becoming the beabetter.parent.com podcast. I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today because it's a topic that is very difficult for parents. And it's a topic that I hear from parents all the time. How do I help my child? How do I help my child? And that's around grief. So a family member has died, a pet has died, or even someone in the news has died. And parents don't know how to approach what could very well be a difficult conversation. So I'm excited to introduce you to Dr. Jerry L. Woodbridge. She is a Christ-lit, award-winning Christian author, grief advocate, and lifelong educator with a heart for those navigating loss. She wrote a wonderful book called Joy Overcame Sorrow, which is written for the preteen, teenage kids. And we're going to talk about that as well. So Dr. Jerry L. Woodbridge, welcome to the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you. So if you would, your website is, for those of you that, can't stay on too long, I just want to let you know that her website is Dr. Dr. Let me spell this out for you. Dr. Jerry, Jerry, L. Woodbridge, Wood like dog, B like boy, RIDGE.com. So that's her website if you want to look her up. And please, if you're listening to this podcast, come back and listen, give us comments, share it out, because grief nowadays is a big issue and a lot of kids are dealing with it and a lot of parents don't know how to help their kids. So Jerry, how did you get into advocating for families, helping people deal with grief? How did this all come about for you?
I experienced grief early in my marriage when I lost babies when we were trying to have children. So I learned lessons about how to learn to navigate and function and get through that process. But the real big lesson was in 2004 when my husband, Dave, died from colon cancer suddenly. And so I was a wife, a mother of 2 children. My son was 12, my daughter was 16. And suddenly I became a widow and single parent.
I'm so sorry.
So I had a calling for teaching when I was in 10th grade. So I was also an educator. So I was also seeing grief show up in the classroom. And, there was a 5th grade boy in my classroom that he had lost his dad 2 years prior, but he was still trying to go through the grief process and navigate grief. So I initially wanted to do a TEDx speech on how ballroom dancing helped me move through grief. And the business women that I had to make my pitch to really did not understand that. So
I don't
So
know. I think that's pretty smart.
exactly. So anyway, I said, look, I'm a teacher and I've been able to help kids because I've experienced loss myself. I understand what it looks like. I understand how it can show up. I understand grief triggers. So, and they said, oh, you should write a children's book on grief. Okay. So I was a little disappointed that I wasn't going to get to do my speech, but um, I took on the challenge. And at that time, that was back in November 2019. And I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know how to write fiction. I didn't know how to write from a first person child's point of view. I didn't know how to lower my vocabulary so it would sound like a child. So there were a lot of things that I had to learn in the process. And there were many times that I would set the book aside. And of course, I joined all these writing groups and went to writing conferences. And they said, you have to have a platform, you have to do all this. And it just exhausted me. So there were several times I set it down. But back last year in September, the Lord said to me, it's time to get your book out. It's time to finish it. It's time to get it out. So obviously, there is a plan that this is supposed to help people. So finally, all the pieces came together. As soon as you told me the book's got to come out, it's like boom, boom, boom. All the pieces came together. It's written from a faith point of view, and which is how I got through my own grief, how my children got through their grief. So I call it my Pollyanna version of a book because Joy had two Christian parents, and she's riding her bike with her best friend Bella. They're getting to do their first solo bike ride because they're now 10 years old. And they're feeling very cocky and very, confident. Let's go. Let's go to the community park. So we learn a little bit about Joy. She's a daredevil. She loves dragonflies. Her friend loves butterflies. They tell stories about when they met there in the community park playground. But on the ride back home, they see that there is a police car in front of a house. And the closer they get to the house, they see, oh, the police car is in front of Joy's house. So, you have that pit in your stomach of what's going on,
What's the problem?
what's the problem. So Joy says, I don't know, but I'm going to go find out. So she's pretty straightforward. You know how Joy feels. She tells you. And so she goes and parks her bike in the backyard, goes in to the kitchen. She's hot and thirsty. She's filling her cup with Kool-Aid a couple times, and she hears in the background her mom talking in on the phone in her bedroom saying, Billy, I need you to come as soon as possible because I'm going to need your help and I need to go now talk to Joy. So Joy kind of overhears this, still wondering what's going on. Mom comes into the kitchen. She's kind of putting her elbows in her head because she's still trying to figure out how am I going to tell Joy the bad news. And so Joy just bluntly asks, so why were there policemen in front of our house? Well, that leads the conversation. That's the bad news. That's the gut wrenching chapter. That's where she goes through denial, no, no, no. All of the emotions. And, at the same time, the mother is also grieving at
Right.
the same time.
And you'll need to get the book to find out more. But I'm
Yeah,
already interested.
good.
But, you know, it's so um it's so important that you wrote this book because parents will be able to relate, kids will be able to relate. And so often parents just they don't know what to do. And there's all these myths. Oh, kids will get over it easy. Kids will go. They're resilient. And you do need to be resilient to deal with trauma. I mean, that's absolute requirement of life.
But they don't
But
have the
parents
skills.
think, right, they think, oh, well, if we don't talk about it, it'll go away somehow. I'm not quite sure how people think that, but they think that. And they don't know what to do, how to start it. And storytelling is such a healing device and such a great way. I can see a mother and child, or a parent and child, or a grandparent child reading this book together
Yes.
and diving into whatever reality relates to them.
And when I shared the concept of the book on social media, I've had adults say, "Oh, I need to read this book. I lost my loved one at the age of 8."
Mm,
And for some reason, when we have that trauma, wherever we are developmentally at that age, is where we get stuck unless we're able to navigate it, unless we're
right.
able to move through it. So I agree with you. The myth that children are resilient, they don't have the skills, they don't have the personal experience of working through grief and knowing, okay, why am I angry? Why am I sad? Why am I frustrated? Why do I not want to hang out with my best friend anymore? You know, they don't have the verbal skills or the experience to know, how to work through those things. So it's a challenge for parents because especially if they're grieving
Yes. And
is
and
very
it's hard for the kids if they have adults in their world that don't want to talk about it, because then kids feel like they can't talk about it. Oh, no one's even mentioning this. And that happens. You see it in movies, but it actually happens in real
right,
life, where
right,
people are like, okay, well, we're not going to talk about your mom. We're going to take pictures down, or we're going to take after your father or your grandmother or whoever that person is, or the dog. I mean, people don't even realize how impactful a pet is
right,
on a child, and and adults. I mean, pets are hugely impactful because they're that unconditional love. And it is so important because often parents are like, I have to be like good with this. I can't show my sorrow. I can't show that I'm sad, because then that's going to make them sad. But in reality, if you share your emotions with a child and you process them, it gives them permission to share their emotions
right.
and learn to process those.
Yes. Now, I watched the movie Sketch that is out there. Did not realize at the time that Sketch is basically a movie about grief. The little girl is drawing all these scary figures or whatever because she is grieving, and that's how she processes. Okay. But she's being real, she's being authentic with her feelings. Okay. Brother's trying to keep it together, to keep the family together because mom has passed away. Dad has removed pictures of mom and all these memories because he is having trouble dealing with the loss. So, but he's still a good enough dad. I mean, he's not good enough, but he's a good dad that wants to understand. And so it's definitely a great movie for families to watch together and to talk about. So um, I love that it's very creative. Um, so in the beginning, I'm going, this looks like a scary movie for kids. Why would you do this? But it basically, when kids are grieving, things are scary.
Yeah, things are very scary. What's my world look like from this point on, especially if you lose a parent?
Yes.
What does my world look like without my father, without my mother? It's
Ah,
the same grief process goes through when there's a divorce. And the not knowing what you don't know is always a scary thing.
it is.
If you could take a crystal ball and I go, this is what your life's going to look like, that would alleviate a lot of fear and a lot of concern and questions. But that's not possible. And we need to understand that there are ways that we can help our kids process. Like instead of taking away pictures, create like a memory box, and
Yes,
start putting stuff that reminds you of whoever or whatever in the memory box so you can look through it, you can refer to it, and you can smile. The things that make you happy. Oh, or here's a piece of music me and mom used to always sing, or me and dad, or me and grandma, or here's a story grandma used to tell me. This book, this was our favorite book. And when you bring things like that, then there are constant positive reminders of
right.
what was great about that person. And there's not the emptiness of I can't even talk about this person. There's no one to even talk about this to. I'm just miserable.
One thing I would say is we grieve because we love.
Right.
Now, we're joyful and we rejoice, like, uh, birth of a new baby, graduation, marriage, all of these things. Why? Because we love those people too. So if we think about what connects grief and joy, it's love.
Yeah. And I love
So
that your character's name is Joy. I just want to say that real quick.
yes, I did that with intention.
Yeah.
Um,
Good choice.
be, because yeah, I mean, while we will all experience loss at some point in our lives, we don't have to stay stuck. We Because when we stay stuck and we stay stuck in the past, and we start comparing and saying, well, that person still has their husband, or that person still has their dad, then we get into resentfulness and bitterness and envy. And we know scripturally that envy rots the bones. It rots our soul. So why would we want to stay stuck in that when love and understanding and knowing that, yes, we're going to miss them. We love them. They were good for us. We have these wonderful times, and that we'll be able to talk to other people that know them. Then we have joy
Right.
on the other side. And as we heal, then we help heal other people.
Yes.
But as long as we stay stuck, we're not healed and we're not helping other people.
Right. And when you celebrate a person or a thing and you become joyful, just like you said, you also give permission for someone else to be joyful.
Right?
You don't always have to live thinking, well, now this person is no longer here. I can't talk about this person. I can't have fun again with this. Like, and list and like go through the list of all the downside of them being there instead of realizing, well, they're still there in your heart. They're still there in your thoughts. They're still there in your memories. Um, and that is what keeps them alive in your life.
Right. Because they're very important people to you. And the fact that, when we lose them, sometimes we feel a little lost because it's like, who am I now? I mean, okay, I didn't sign up to be a widow. I didn't sign up to be a single parent.
Right.
um, but now what do I do? So, so I did scripture study and I said, I looked up all the scriptures that talked about the widow and the fatherless and found that the Lord will protect me. He will provide for me. And, He will encourage me, walk with me through my grief. A lot of people want to blame God and say, well, why'd you allow this to happen? He didn't, but He will be with us.
Right.
So, when I lost my first baby, I was struggling, like people do, and questioning, and went to a Christian counselor, and they said, okay, if you can imagine your child in heaven, tell me what you see. And I could visualize that. And I said, oh. Jesus is holding my child. What better person to take care of my child if that baby cannot be in my arms? And at that point, I had the peace
Felt
that
better.
I needed. Yeah,
Yeah. It's, it's so, I understand there are people that are not spiritual, and everybody, you know, has their own spirituality. But I will always believe that when you have some kind of spirituality and hope, whoever you pray to, whoever, you know, you have as that person that supports you and walks with you and guides you, whether it's through Christianity, I am Jewish, through Judaism, through any other
right,
faith-based, you know, organization, it gives you support. It gives you things to believe in. It gives you something to read about that relates to any topic. That's the amazing thing, like about the Bible and books like that, is every topic's in there. And yes, people will say, why did you let this happen? Why did this happen? But and I know as we get older, there are reasons that you may not know at that moment, but something that happened along the way that's like, oh, that had to happen for me to do this. For you, you wrote a book that just helps countless people and kids. You wouldn't have written that book if you have not gone on this journey.
right.
And that book can be like a lifeline for people. And there are not a lot of books like that out there, at least not that
Right.
I have found.
No, when I did my research, I found there's a lot of picture books, for eight and under, but there's not fiction books where it tells a story that you see the character go through the grief journey. Now, this book captures the first year. Doesn't mean that's the end of the grief journey for Joy, because she says at the end, she goes, I know I'm not done grieving my dad any more than I'm done loving him.
That's a great line.
Yeah. So, but the sorrow is fading. It's not time that heals all wounds in grief. It is the processing.
Absolutely. And
So,
and and you have to allow for the process, whether you're an adult or you're a child at whatever age. We all process grief at different times and different speeds.
yes,
So many people think, oh, it's a child. They'll be over it in a month. They'll feel much better. It may take years. You have to allow that time. And
yes,
it may not should. They may be doing great. I remember when my grandmother passed away, my daughter was 4 years old, and she got to know my grandmother, her great grandmother, because when my grandma got sick, my parents moved her up from Florida to Baltimore to live with them. So my daughter got to know her fairly well, even though she was little, 3 and 4. And when grandma passed away, I drove Lauren home. And somehow she must have just passed away or something, because it was in the car that I told her. And I said, grandma's in heaven. And I said, she's with grandpa. And like I gave this whole elaborate explanation to help her, I mean, age appropriately, to help her understand where grandma was and that grandma was okay. Great grandma was okay. And she just kind of sat there and listened. And a child of that age at 4, you think, do they really get any of this? Are they absorbing anything I say? And it was so interesting because about 2 years later, Lauren brought up great grandma, and she almost to word reiterated exactly what I told her in that car that day. And I had never heard her speak of it since, before that. So it took
Mhm.
2 years, but she heard everything I said and remembered everything I said. So it's, don't feel like if they're just sitting there blankly, whatever age, it could be a teenager, that they're not hearing you. And
Right,
sometimes it's not even about you solving the problem, but you listening. They just need to talk and they need to have someone to listen to. And I say it again and again, the best communicators are the best listeners. So sometimes they just need someone to listen, not solve. And parents have a hard time doing that. They want to make everything all better.
right. They're fixers.
Right, right. And sometimes you can't fix. You can't
Sometimes you
fix a
can't.
death.
Nope. And you can't fix how somebody else needs to process and grieve.
Exactly.
So we may not even be the best person that a child feels they can go to. So we need to understand that sometimes maybe it's another family member that they talk to, or
Or a
maybe,
therapist or a counselor
right,
or a teacher they're close to. I mean, some kids are very close to their teachers.
right,
Find their person or, or a clergy or someone that they trust that can help and advise them if you can. And don't, more than anything, don't take insult to the fact that your child may need to talk to somebody else.
right,
That emotional connection can make talking very difficult because they don't want to hurt your feelings.
right. And a lot of times, okay, let's say we're emotional people and they can tell that we are sad, as the
Right.
parents. They may not want to add to ours.
They
I
want to
mean,
protect us.
they want to
Exactly.
they want to protect us, but at the same time, I think it's okay for us to be authentic. I think that's what everybody needs to be.
Absolutely.
You
That,
have to be authentic and true and say, this is how I'm feeling. I am missing whoever it is for this reason. This is naming our grief.
yes.
This is this is like I miss my dad reading books with me at bedtime.
Yeah.
That is something that we can help our children process and say, okay, you're missing daddy? Okay, can you tell me what kind of things did daddy do that you're missing? And then we have an idea of what we might be able to do. But first of all, we have to listen to why are they missing their daddy? What
Right.
particular thing bonded, created that bond with them? I know my son at 12 did not have the knowledge of what he experienced, but he experienced panic attacks. And, my husband died of colon cancer, but the last thing that happened before he died was he had a heart attack, because his organs were shutting down, and that was the last thing. So if you have panic attacks and you're feeling tightness in your chest and anxiety and things like that, in his mind, he thought he was dying like his dad.
Right.
And then, okay, he didn't die, but he's going into his teenage years and he's like having a lot of anxiety and he's not knowing where it's coming from. So until he was 17, could he verbally express to me that that's what he was experiencing? Now, I was grieving. My daughter was grieving. I'm trying to take care of everybody. And why did I miss that?
Because
I,
you're not Superman,
right,
Superwoman.
exactly. But I
And
bring
that's
that,
okay that you missed that
yeah,
because you were processing too.
and that's why I bring it up, that it's something that we ourselves may not even be aware of a way that a child is responding to grief. Sometimes we look for the kids that are really sad or withdrawn or really angry, but we may be missing that part.
Right.
And it,
Sometimes the cover of humor is how people show and deal with grief. And since you mentioned that, I don't want to forget to mention that for children, there is a lot of black and white. There because a lot, depending on their age, they don't have the logic and reasoning built into their brains yet. They don't have the processing. So things are very black and white. And even for older kids and teenagers, well, if daddy can die, why can't mommy die?
Right.
If this
That's
one can
another.
die, why can't this one die? If this one can get sick, why can't this one get sick? It's very, all of a sudden, reality hits you in the face,
Right.
and it's like, well, I didn't think anybody would die, and now someone has. What does
Right.
that mean for the rest of the people? You're getting old. My grandson, he's always like, Gammon, when are you going to die? I'm like, well, hopefully not anytime soon. And, but
Right.
I had a heart attack. I became a heart attack survivor, let me word it that way, 5 years ago. As parents, we all have those moments. The pressure builds up, the noise gets too much, and before we know it, we're raising our voices higher than we ever intended. But what if there was a better way? Introducing 21 Days to Stop Yelling at Your Kids, a revolutionary program designed to help you communicate with your children without yelling. Imagine a home filled with understanding and respect, where your words have impact without the need to raise your voice. Created through my over 40 years of experience, this course offers you practical, easy to implement strategies that work in real life. You'll learn through interactive lessons, engaging exercises, and a supportive community. No judgments, just guidance. Because being a parent doesn't have to mean you're perfect. It's about growing and it's about becoming intentional. In just 21 days, life will be calmer and more harmonious. What if you don't get the course? Where will you be in 21 days? Still feeling like a bad parent? I encourage you to join the millions of parents that I have helped who have found a new path to communication and connection. Visit quityelling.com to enroll in the 21 Days to Stop Yelling course today. And for our podcast listeners, use the code PODCAST for a 60% discount. Quityelling.com, because love speaks so much louder than yelling. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side. And I was
Amen.
with my grandkids, and my granddaughter, who was 6 at the time, was hysterical crying because she had just lost my dad, her great grandpa, and she had just lost her other great grandma on the other side of the family. And now here I am with all these medical people around me and ambulances lying on the floor. I'm My 3-year-old, he was like, okay, they're taking care of Gammon. I'm living my best 3-year-old life. But
Right.
it was very hard for her to deal with it because here's number 3. And am I going to live? She just had the experience of 2, and it like almost one right after another deaths. And there I am. And it brings that reality to a child that people don't live forever. And what does that mean to me in my life? And it's not that they're being selfish, they're being curious and they don't know.
Right. One of the first questions my son asked was, "Who's going to cook for us?" Because
Oh,
my
you're a
husband,
mom like me.
hey, I was busy. I was working on my doctorate. I was doing, lots of things, and so my husband took over those duties. And even when I finished, he wanted to continue. So I'm
He's
like,
like, Mom, I'll never
hey.
eat again. What's going to happen to us?
So yeah, so even thinking about basic needs, okay, dad did this. who's
Do
going to
you
do
even
that?
know how to cook, Mom? Because my kids don't even let me in the kitchen. They're like, do not cross this line, Mom. Just you go play with the kids and we'll take care of this.
Yeah, I'm like, well, we'll figure it out. So, but yeah, so they're depending on where they are developmentally, they're like, okay, how are my basic needs still going to be met?
And right. And it's not selfish, it's
No,
reality for
it
them.
is.
That was very real. Dad cooked meals. Mom doesn't cook meals. Now we don't have dad. What happens to food? I mean, it's very logical.
Yes,
And I hope when things like that come up in your family, not yours, the listeners, that you don't be, oh, that's what you're worried about? Food? Like that you judge and criticize their thoughts. You
right.
have to let them have thoughts. Even if it's a little kid and you have them drawing pictures because they can't explain it. There's so actually, and I have a grief workbook for families, which I will give you the link. Well, if you go to beabetterparent.com, you'll go in the download section. But there's a whole grief workbook around this, and it's it goes through how you can help your kids, and that's one of the things. Do not judge and criticize their processing.
And I'd also say you don't always have to have the right words, the right answers. You don't, I mean, just be honest.
Yeah,
Sometimes we say, I don't know,
and
you know,
that's okay.
and I don't know what we're doing, but I'm going to try to, like the first year, I try to keep everything as normal as possible,
Right.
with um, schedules and things like that. But year two is like, okay, well, we need money, so I need a job, so we need to travel across country, settle somewhere else. Um, and that was something that my children had never experienced because we'd always been in Florida. So, and there was grief with that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's one of life's major changes, moving.
Yes.
So, yeah, and that goes through the cycle too. This is such a great conversation. Jerry, I feel like we could like talk about this, talk about this, talk about this. But what I want you guys to do is I want you to go to Dr. Doctor, don't spell out doctor, drjerryLwoodbridge.com. They get your book there. They get on Amazon. Where do they get your book?
They can go directly to Amazon or they can go to the website because right now it's linked to Amazon.
Oh, good.
Eventually I will have my own storefront, but at this time it's linked directly to Amazon. And they can get all three of the books. And I'm already working on my second one.
Awesome. Awesome. And it's just a great way. I can't emphasize how important storytelling is to life's challenges and successes.
Right.
That's what's great about generational connections. Knowing the grandparents, getting your kids involved with the generations because there's all that ability for generational storytelling. Storytelling is a gift.
It is.
And here is a book from a child's point of view that literally, guys, you should read together. Like, let your child read one page, you read one page. That's how I went through seventh grade with my son, who had a ridiculous history book. And the whole seventh grade, I'd read a page, he'd read a page. I'd read a page, he'd read a page. That's how we went through history. And actually, I was like, oh, history is kind of interesting, which I don't think it was when I was a kid. But read it together.
Yes.
Imagine the discussions. Imagine the thoughts that they might not even think to bring up, or you might not think to bring up.
And Joy's journal is a complement to the book.
Oh, I forgot about that. I meant
That
to mention that.
that's okay. It starts off with a book prompt. So it's asking questions about, okay, what were the emotions that Joy felt when she got the bad news? Okay, so because they've read that chapter, they can answer that question and say she felt, um, you know, she felt they may not have the words for denial, but no, no, no. They can put that down, and even a parent can help to write
Yes.
this if they're younger, or maybe they're not a writer. And then they ask the question about how did you feel? What were your emotions that you felt when you heard the news? Um, so it's kind of working throughout the book, and the journal, because one aspect of the book for Joy is her cousin gave her a journal before she went to the funeral. She said, I'm giving this to you so you can write down all the stories that people tell you about your dad. And then as a result, Joy started journaling herself
So
and
great,
all the things that she was feeling.
which is so
So,
important.
yeah. And so journaling, artwork, creative dance. My daughter took ballroom dance as well, and that was very healing for her because music is very healing, and
Yes,
learning
absolutely.
something new and forming social connections that are not necessarily couple or related. These are
Yes,
all things that we need. We need to continue to
absolutely.
grow.
And you need the freedom to allow them to express
Exactly.
and
And
you
I
express.
and I think we need community because we grieve alone, but we heal in community.
Yes,
And I think our community is really good at sympathy. Our community needs to grow up a little bit to be more empathetic because I needed someone to be a male figure for my son. I didn't need to get married again.
right.
That wasn't what I was after.
Was not the
I
goal.
just I just needed someone who could be a man that my son could talk to because I can't understand his brain,
Yeah.
and how he's processing.
And he might relate to a man better than he'll
Yeah,
relate to a woman.
exactly. And there came a time where he said, Mom, I can't stay here. I need to go back to Florida. I need to go live with my best friend's family because he has a dad. And that's a place he felt safe. They were the family that he was with when we got the bad news about my husband dying. So that's how he needed to process his grief, because before that he was getting in trouble. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he was
And that shows grief too. I mean, that happens
exact,
a lot. There's
exact.
so many ways it can show in a child and an adult. I mean, they can do the same thing, get very angry, and that anger shows up in all kinds of ways. Well, Jerry,
Well,
thank you so much for this discussion. It's really been a pleasure. Um, Please, once again, if you're listening and if you found this helpful, please share this out to someone. There's people are grieving all over the place, and sometimes you don't even know if they're grieving. And
right.
sometimes we forget that they're grieving. So please share this out to someone that you know that this may help. And if you enjoyed this podcast, give us a comment. Visit drjerryLwoodbridge.com, download her book, Joy Overcame Sorrow, and look for the accompanying journal. And if you want a workbook, go to beabetterparent.com and look under, it's under my resources or shop or something like that, or the downloadable resources, and that's one of them. Uh, there's a lot of help for you. And just know that often times throw us for a loop. Things get hard. Conversations with our kids are hard, but avoidance doesn't help anything.
No, it doesn't. And I would say send a book rather than a condolence card.
I love that idea. That's an excellent idea. That's an excellent.
Be, because then they can, when they're ready for it, they can open up that book. How many people need 100 condolence cards?
Yeah, not many.
And what do you do with them?
And instead, you're sending a tool for
Right.
healing. Love
Exactly.
that idea. Wonderful idea. So send a friend a book. Well, thank you, Jerry. Is there any last? So, we've talked about so much. Is there one more piece of advice you would have for somebody who's listening who is struggling with how to deal with grief itself or how to deal with a child as they go through the grief process?
I know one of my life-saving things for me was finding a group of other widows and widowers that I could share my stories with and share stories of my life, after the fact with. And I did not realize until recently, um, I was able to attend a widows group, and I was the newcomer, and I asked to join them. And it was just like, oh, this was so refreshing because it was a group of ladies that loved on each other. They supported each other. They talked about everything from renovating their homes to finding plumbers to, what was going on with their family. And they were sharing it with a group of women who understood sorrow, but they could also celebrate joy. We can hold, it's like there's a coffee cup out there and it says this, that you can hold sorrow and joy at the same time.
I love that. I love that. Find your people. There's no
Find your people.
coincidence that unity is part of the word community. So find your community.
Yes,
Well, thank you, Jerry, again. Very grateful for you being here. And I know I speak for Jerry in thanking all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen, share, and comment. We'd love to hear from you. Jerry, thank you so much.
you're welcome.
And to all of you, as always, I wish you days filled with peace, love, lots of laughter. Laughter really is the best medicine. Don't be afraid to laugh. Don't be afraid to watch a comedy. Don't feel like you have to be serious the whole time. Laughter lightens up a lot of things. So laugh more with your kids, have fun, and we'll see you here next time on the Be a Better Parent podcast. Bye bye, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. If this episode was helpful to you, please share it with a friend and leave us a review that will help others. Wonder why kids don't come with a manual? Well, wonder no more, because I wrote you one, and it's just won a wonderful Mom's Choice Award. Go to celiasbooks.com and buy your copy of Raising Happy Toddlers, as well as my children's books. I appreciate you being part of my mission to help 10 million parents stop yelling at their kids. Please be intentional and hug on those kids of yours. See you at the next episode.